there you are. Hello, welcome. It's another fantastic selection of really ghastly tales from the Sinful Radio 2 listener, up to no good as normal. They all need some forgiveness here from the Caring Collective. This week we have in our concise collection a comedy copier caper, a lying lawn loafer, tennis totty trouble, and a creative comic cabana catastrophe. Here it is. So thank you very much, Steve, for all the confessions that have been coming in. Let's take this one from Bry in Brum. That is how it's signed, and that's how it's going to be. Father Simon and the Collective, due to the person involved in my confession, I will understand if you cannot consider forgiving me. However, this shameful day has haunted me for many years, and I need to get it off my chest. The incident happened back in June 1991. As an 18-year-old underpaid YTS photocopier engineer, my goal in life was to work as little as possible. My colleague and co-conspirator, Stan the Man, was not known for his conversation, so my working days consisted of sleeping as much as possible in the van as Stan drove me to various locations to remove and deliver photocopiers. What a glamorous life we had. As most of my friends were at university, once my work was done, I would then party the night away at a student bar and then repeat the next day. On this fateful day, though, I was most upset that the location of the first delivery was the newly built Birmingham ICC and only 2 miles from the office. Fear struck me with the knowledge I had no chance to sleep off the hangover I was nursing until I would have to lift a heavy photocopier. However, the second job was in Northampton, so my priority was to get this first job over and done with as soon as possible so I could enjoy a good doze for a few hours and then recover. On arriving at the ICC, we were approached by a number of security guards with mirrors on sticks, who searched the van and us from top to bottom. We were told very firmly that we would have to park at the back of the building, then walk the long way round to deliver and collect the old, very heavy copier that had been used during the construction works. So Stan and I removed the new photocopier from the van and wheeled it around the building with the normal "to you, to me" type jokes, and which we found hilarious, and the care and attention fitting for that time in the morning. In other words, not very much. I quickly set up the new photocopier, which actually means I plugged it in, because I needed to earn my engineering title, but that's basically what it involves. On closer inspection of the old photocopier, we noticed that 2 of the corners were propped up with wood, as the wheels had disintegrated long before now. Horror of horrors, this would mean that we would have to carry this beast of a machine back the long way around the building, and now my pounding head was desperately searching for an alternative. "Stan," I said, because I'm from London, I bet that van, I know it says I'm from Birmingham, but I'm not doing that. I bet the van, because I went to school in London, Croydon actually, I bet the van is just the other side of this wall, so let's see if that fire exit has got an alarm. So after a few seconds, Stan was from London too. That's a good plan.
All right, son. Yeah.
So after a few seconds of inspection, we agreed that we could take a shortcut via the exit with minimum effort to reach the van with our heavy load. It was a prohibited route, and we really shouldn't have. As always, I was given the job of walking backwards, desperately trying to hold one half of the copier and trying to find the exit bar with my backside. Success! The door opened without any piercing alarms, which was a surprise, and I continued to walk out, and all seemed to be going well until the feeling of being rugby tackled to the floor happened. This is because I was rugby tackled to the floor, and there was an almighty crash as this ancient photocopier fell and smashed into 100 pieces. I looked around to try and find out who I was going to need to have a calm word with about my current situation. It was then that I noticed the large man now pinning me down to the floor was wearing a black suit and an earpiece. I also noticed the very clean Rolls-Royce with no number plate, parked only a few feet away, with a well-dressed, rather familiar elderly lady stepping out.
Oh dear.
Father Simon, I don't ask for forgiveness from Stan for straining his wrist when trying to save the copier, as he could have stopped me at any time, and not from my company for the embarrassment and the destruction of a machine, as my boss, who was told to sack me, could not do so, as he was so overjoyed at receiving a letter from the Royal Secretary, because I ask for forgiveness mainly from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, for it was her and her car, thank you very much, and her security staff, and I asked for forgiveness because I attacked them with a two-wheeled photocopier during the grand opening of the ICC. I also asked forgiveness for my friends, as on occasion I bore them to death with this story. However, if they had not forced me to take in the delights of the Student Union bar the night before, I would not have taken such a risk. And before you ask, the answer to that is yes. Her Majesty said, if that's a Toshiba BD 4515, I'm having it. Because that's the way she talks. Anyway, thank you, Brian from Brum. Who'd have thought the Queen would half-inch a Toshiba BD 4515? But apparently they're quite rare these days. Anyway, so he wasn't thinking, went out the wrong entrance, and right there, the head of state. I mean, what an extraordinary story, but how reassuring to know that the security guys were on him like that. You're not moving. Thank you, because they talk like that.
Yeah, they do.
It's just the one.
Handily.
Just the one voice, everybody. Just the one voice. Sister Bobby, what do you make of all that then?
I am caught in the middle here.
Yes.
Because, first of all, you got inebriated the night before, so you weren't really on it, and you weren't really kind of running on full power, really, were you? And you were trying to make excuses and trying to find shortcuts, not because it was the best thing in interest of health and safety, so you didn't, carry that heavy thing too far. It's because you were lazy. Mm-hmm. However, I also think that actually you weren't being paid very much, and you might have been used for many, many hours without much money. And also, the other thing is, your saving grace is the photocopier was broken anyway, and it got smashed to pieces, and it means that you and Stan saved your backs. So on that condition, you are forgiven.
All right. Okay. Well, Brian from Brum, what's he going to get from Matthew?
Well, you have to think that there's slight degree of overreaction in rugby tackling him to the ground.
Are you kidding? No.
He's carrying a photocopier.
But
What's going to go wrong there?
It might not have been a photocopier.
And also, he was coming through backwards. So I think the question is more of your man who's going forwards.
Stan the man.
Stan the man should have been saying, hang on, this doesn't look right. Maybe we should go a different exit, blah, blah, blah.
That lady looks familiar. Maybe we should back off.
And why is that man running at us with his earpiece in? However, the reason why I'm not going to forgive Bry may sound to be somewhat tangential.
Yes.
But I can't stand people who can sleep anywhere. I am so jealous of people who can sleep on trains and sleep on car and basically just have to sit down and they're asleep. And it takes me forever to get. I can never sleep on planes, and it drives me nuts. So I am not going to forgive just because of that. Because who are these people who think they can, and who can just sit down and fall asleep? It's just not fair.
Tonight's comes from Gary. You'll be interested to know that's Gary checking in here. Dear Father Simon and all that is holy. By the way, not forgiven, just check.
You've got a pretty poor record with this. You always say that, and actually it doesn't happen.
Last time I said that, everybody forgave. Yeah. Absolutely everybody forgave. Yeah. But then it's because I have higher morals than you. Because you have the morals of a sewer rat, if you remember. Yeah. Anyway, Gary continues, not that he's actually started. I have just a sneaky feeling that I might be in trouble here, but I am begging forgiveness anyway. Please have mercy. My story starts in 1995 when I moved into a house with my girlfriend, who is now my wife. We were very happy and life was good. She was fabulous and lovely. She still is fabulous and lovely, he adds swiftly. And everything in the garden was rosy. And actually, it's in the garden where my story takes place. The house had a large lawn area, both at the front and at the rear of the property. Not bad for a first house then, you have to say, pretty good. There were flower beds and a few trees, but it was the lawn that the eye was drawn to. A big lawn that was going to take quite a lot of work. Pretty soon after we moved in, the day came when it was getting a little untidy, and my girlfriend asked me to cut the grass. Gary, she would declare, that grass... It's just a neutral voice. Could come from anywhere. Anyway. Yeah. Gary! That grass won't cut itself, you know. She continues, would you please hurry up and cut it? Cut the grass.
Cut it?
Get out of that chair and cut the grass. Well, I replied, casually, actually, no. She laughed a little, but I shook my head sadly. She asked me why, and I said, well, I'm sure I've told you, but I actually have a severe allergy to newly mown grass. You remember that? It gives me really bad hay fever. It's been bad since I was a kid, you know, when I was in the field. Right? Remember that? Fine. She looked a little bit surprised, but said, OK, fair enough. You have to look after yourself. I don't want you getting all wheezy and sneezy. You settle down, have a cup of tea. So she got the lawnmower out and proceeded to do a pretty fantastic job, actually, of keeping the whole lawn looking rather wonderful. When she came back inside, she saw my hay fever tablets and made sure she washed her hands and kept the window shut. And that's the way it's been, Father Simon, from that day until now, a period of 21 years. That's 21 years I have not cut the grass. 21 years and counting. Though how much longer I'm going to be counting for, I'm not sure. Last year, my wife was starting to struggle mowing the grass. She found the uphill slope very hard work. She isn't getting any younger, you know, adds Gary.
Yeah, neither are you,
digging his own grave here. Yeah. If actually he did any work.
Yeah.
Probably get his wife to dig us. Anyway. After much discussion, we decided that we would remove the grass at the front and replace it with slate to make it easier for her. This would then create a low-maintenance front garden, and my wife could easily manage that. When we decided to go ahead with this, the first thing that had to be done was obviously to remove the grass. Obviously. And because of my issues about grass, it wasn't possible for me to do it, so I arranged for a turf cutter to be delivered to my house for my wife to use. Well, on arriving home one day, I witnessed my wife bathed in sweat, having lifted all the grass entirely on her own. I have to say, she'd done a terrific job.
Oh, would you? That's good of you.
Well done.
Yeah.
So, as you might have guessed, this whole thing, Father Simon, actually is an appalling charade. I am not and have never been allergic to grass, but I have kept this 21-year-old secret. I've kept it going to get out the mowing the lawn. I seek forgiveness from my wonderful, forgiving wife, who now knows quite publicly of my deception. And no, I don't take the allergy tablets. I just have the box handy in case, you understand, just for show. Yeah, look, I'm, in case, ready to take them. Dear Collective, can you forgive me now that I have come clean after all these years? Regards, or should that be regrass? Gary, not a funny joke. No forgiveness, I'm telling you that. I'm telling you that right now. It's the way it's going to go. For 21 years, he pretended to have hay fever, so his wife cut the grass. Front and back, it's got a slope as well. And now he thinks I'm the best person to break it to Mrs. Gary. It's checking in now with Sister Bobby.
Well, it's easy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not forgiven.
Really?
Yeah, deceitful, devious, duplicitous, the three Ds. You are definitely not forgiven. Can I just say, actually, I did want to say, look, cutting the grass isn't a man's job, just like washing the dishes is not a girl's job. It's not gender specific. If she liked cutting the lawn, they swapped, and she said, look, I hate ironing, you do that and watch the football and I'll cut the lawn. If it was an arrangement that they had, absolutely fine.
You don't have to balance it. You
know what, Gary? You are so unforgiven.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the way. Do you think there are many other couples or families where people go, I'm being rumbled because I've been faking it as well for quite a while? What do you think, Brother Matthew?
I'm going to say that, Gary, it is you that has missed out, because I mow the lawn and it is highly therapeutic. I love mowing the lawn. I would mow the lawn all year round if I could, but obviously I can't. But it is great fun, and you are the one that's missed out. What I think is outstanding about this is that I thought you were going to say, well, we got rid of the front lawn and I arranged for someone to come round to get rid of it. No, I think I'll just get my wife to do it, because she's been doing everything else. Wife is clearly an angel. She clearly married beneath her. Well done, Gary, for keeping that going for 20 odd years, but definitely not forgiven.
Are you available? Do you hire yourself out?
I would pay money to mow other people's lawns. I love mowing
Really?
lawns. Yes.
Cool.
I'm not very good at it. But I love doing it.
Tonight's comes from Barb. Thanks, Barb. If you miss any, the Confessions podcast available, and that'll be up on Friday. So you can subscribe by the Radio 2 website, or wherever you get it, from iTunes, something like that. Dear Simon and the Mostly Forgiving Collective. Well, it kind of depends on your story, Barb. I listen to your show, particularly the Confessions, most days. It usually coincides pleasingly with my 40-mile commute from work, allowing me to hear both the confession and the listener's verdict before arriving home. I have idly considered unburdening myself before, but somehow it's never quite felt like the right time until now. So, Father Simon, I take you back to where it all began, the event of my dear friend Gail's 40th birthday. It's early March 2011. We've been friends since secondary school and had shared many a peach schnapps-fueled adventure to the soundtrack of Deacon Blue, Erasure and In Excess, mostly in Scotland's premier hotspot of the time, Flick's nightclub in Brechin. You remember that? It featured on The Hitman and Her, and Kylie even came once.
How could we forget?
Different times, Matt, different
Yeah.
times. If you're in Brecon, this is the most important things
absolutely.
happening. I was keen to mark the occasion of her and my 40th birthday in style. That's her friend Gail, not Kylie. In February that year, I was fortunate enough to receive 2 tickets in the ballot for the Wimbledon Tennis Championships. I entered the ballot every year and had little success, but suddenly I had 2 shiny tickets that money could not buy. Well, money could buy. Number 1 court men's semi-finals day. How about that? It was perfect. Jill loved tennis on the telly, but had never been to Wimbledon. I had a slight crush / great deal of admiration for Rafa Nadal.
Hello.
It was perfect. A special but achievable trip. I humorously presented my gift to Jill at her birthday meal, handing her first half an LP. Half an LP, a semi-vinyl.
Oh, right. No, I get it now.
Right.
Yeah.
Far too clever,
Yeah,
really.
very good.
A bus ticket and then the famous SW14 postcode. Anyway, she worked out the riddle and was absolutely delighted. So far, everything was going great. Our big trip to London came round quickly in July. Aside from having to pay an outrageous amount for a taxi to get us to the ground on time, everything went smoothly. The sun even shone. We watched a wonderful day's tennis while sipping Pimm's on number 1 court, Serena Williams against Marion Bartoli. Then both Djokovic and Federer semi-finals. It was fantastic. However, I did feel just a wee bit disappointed because I missed my favourite, Nadal. Towards the end of a pretty straightforward match for Federer, I began to hatch a plan. I knew Nadal was playing on centre court. If I ran to the resale booth, I might have a chance of getting a couple of tickets. I decided it was worth missing the end of Federer to beat the crowds and dashed off to join the queue. The sun was definitely shining on our day and I quickly bagged 2 tickets for centre court. It was almost 7 p.m. and I excitedly went to find Gail. We headed immediately to catch the last of the match on centre. Having had no time to research our new seat numbers, we had no idea where we would end up sitting. We waited patiently for a break and were then guided by Her Majesty's service people to our seats. We could not believe our luck. We were right at the edge of centre court, just inches away from that gorgeous, sun-tanned Adonis of a man. This isn't Jonathan Overend we're talking about. Oh no, although he too fits the bill.
Obviously.
I settled in, feeling quite delighted with myself and my cunning plan. We were so close to Rafa Nadal. Sadly, we only got to see a few games before this irrepressible genius won. And then Nadal, jubilant, he punched the air and turned towards us. He pulled off his sweaty sweatband that was filled with sweat and hurled it into the crowd.
Oh, no.
It came flying towards us. This was it. Today was going to be truly perfect. I'm going to be going back to Brecon with a part of Rafa Nadal in my pocket.
No.
The sweatband arced towards Gail and I smiled in heady expectation, as obviously she was going to catch it. But alas and alack, no. What was she doing? Why are you looking at the ground, Gail? What are you doing with your head down there? She had her head down, and while she was looking down, some brute from the row behind reached out and grabbed the sweatband from above her head. It turns out she'd just discovered she had lost her very expensive diamond from her very uninsured engagement ring and was somewhat distracted. How selfish of her. Instead of leaving with the pheromones of my hero on my person, we spent the next hour wandering around a rapidly emptying Wimbledon ground, morosely looking at the floor, hopelessly trying to find a diamond. I suppose it was sad, and Gail was crying a lot.
Oh, right.
I felt annoyed at the expensive but incompetent jeweller who designed a ring with specifically the exact amount of flaw to ruin our perfect day. I also felt annoyed at Bill, Gail's husband, for buying such a ridiculously expensive ring but not forking out an extra few quid to insure it. It was a miserable end to a great day. Our weekend was ruined. Nadal's DNA was now resting in someone else's trophy cabinet. Anyway, I need forgiveness, as you might realise, firstly from my friends, the now happily married Gail and Bill, for the uncharitable thoughts that, as you can tell, passed through my mind that evening. I did my best to mask them and to say supportive things, but my heart wasn't in it, and I was very cross. Secondly, I need to seek forgiveness from Rafa Nadal, who I didn't really give the attention he deserved to. If he's listening, we'd love to come and do better this year. Finally, I seek forgiveness from my own husband. Had things gone a little better, I have to say that Nadal's eyes would have met mine, and he would, of course, fallen hopelessly in love with me. I might have hesitated for a moment before determining to remain true to my husband. I hope I can be forgiven for the briefest of hypothetical hesitations. You might like to know that, as the story goes, it does have a happy ending. Hours later, after searching the whole damn place, we miraculously found the diamond under my seat on number 1 court. Anyway, it was all very happy in the end, and the sun was shining on our day, apart from the fact that I didn't take Rafa home with me, or any part of him, or any of his sweat, which stayed with Mr. Nadal and the cad who took the sweatband off the head of my friend. Anyway, what's going on here with Sister Bobby? What do you think there?
Well, it's a lovely story because it had a lovely, wonderful end, and it is actually just the perfect combination of achieving what you wanted. I don't know really what you'd have done with all that DNA, though, from the doll.
She'd have sniffed it all the way home to Brecon. She'd have sniffed the sweatband.
It would have been a terrible thing
And
to
she'd
have.
have worn it herself.
I think
She would have worn it all the time, and in
Who are
bed,
these people?
and to work the next
No,
day.
she wouldn't.
Sniff my head.
Oh,
She'd have said, "Sniff my head,"
no, she wouldn't.
and everyone would come up and say, "You smell like Rafa
No.
Nadal." That's what they'd have
Simon,
said.
I think you actually might be right there. That was what I was scared of. Are you forgiven for thinking bad things about your best friend that you took to Wimbledon and got better tickets? I think actually for the time, for a very brief time, you were a little bit mean. Just a little bit mean. But then you did provide an absolute excellent day out, and actually all wasn't lost at the end, except for the headband. So I think basically you're the loser really here. Everyone else is absolutely fine. So you are forgiven because you did miss out on the headband.
Why are you looking down there? I know it's a diamond. Forget the diamond. Where's my headband?
Well, yes, but I've never understood this. I want to grab the sweatband of someone.
Have you not?
Oh, no, well, I don't understand that at all.
What if Jurgen Klopp had a sweatband?
No, but Can't Stop the Klopp would not have a sweatband on.
Did you never have a crush on anyone?
No,
lovely?
but well, I did, obviously, but I didn't want the sweat. I mean, what's
Yes,
that
you
about?
did.
It's just a bit weird. This is a normal thing. I am the only normal person. Obviously, the rest of you nutters wanting someone's sweat. How weird. You found the diamond under the seat. That was basically everything about this story rings true, apart from one thing, which is who gets a taxi to Wimbledon? Of course you get in charge through the nose. You get
Exactly.
Be like the rest of us, get the tube, and there's a half-hour walk past loads of houses which are mysteriously now selling hot dogs for 20 quid.
And you can park there for £100.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. How does that work exactly? Anyway, I digress. No one gets a taxi anymore apart from royalty. So I am not going to forgive because of the taxi. Everything else makes sense.
Right, here comes tonight's confession. And actually, Carthy's never done one of these. I thought that you had, but actually you do bank holidays, you've done Fridays and stuff. Are you quite harsh? Are you quite forgiving?
I'm not the most forgiving person in the world. If you ask my friends, I think they'll probably tell you that I hold a grudge.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Okay, all right, here comes tonight's tale.
Is it food-based? Because Carthy's a very good cook.
There,
Coming from you, Nigel, that's a compliment,
There's a-
massively.
It is.
there's a vague reference
okay.
to fruit later on,
you
but
Lovely.
not really. Anyway, I think you're going to like this. Comes from Andrew. Thank you very much for sending this in. Simon of the Forgiving Few. I'm writing for absolution for one of my more embarrassing escapades from my first few years of adulthood, travelling around Central America. It may have been over 10 years ago, Simon, but the trauma of the evening in question is so fresh in my mind, I'm afraid I could only write it down in rhyming couplets. Yes. The story revolves around a lovely French girl I met. I'm going to call her Bridget, mainly because I can't remember her real name. I should also mention that despite hailing from Edinburgh, I sound remarkably like Ray Winston with a light Scottish brogue. And as this poem is sort of basically the rest of the confession, I decided to ignore the stage directions because Ray Winston with a slight Scottish brogue
I'm looking forward to this
sounds
already.
to me slightly impossible.
Oh, no, I think you could be the man.
Yeah, I think I might just do it au naturel, if that's okay with you.
Go on, then.
We met at a party, Bridget and I, flirting and drinking as the hours rolled by. We were both backpacking around Mexico's Yucatan, and travelling together quickly became the plan. She may have been older by about 10 years, but my smouldering patter soon abated her fears. I wasn't some young buck without a clue. I was older than my years and pretty dapper too. I knew of some Mayan ruins not too far away, and plans were made to travel the next day. We headed off that morning to the beach at Talum and walked through the cabanas looking for a room. To our surprise, each hut had just one bed. So to be frugal, we decided to share one instead. With each other, after all, we were equally charmed, and another evening together left us far from alarmed. However, better judgment that evening arrived belated, as alas my charms only worked when inebriated. I thought Proust was a racing driver and Hegel a Swiss bred, and her interest waned as I proved less than well read. The final straw was the walk back from the beach, when I climbed for a coconut just out of reach. She was convinced that my antics lacked class, particularly plummeting earthbound onto my lower back. The bed was partitioned with our respective sides as we lay under the fly net, a little cranky, I confide. The summer heat was stifling with no fan in the shack, so we peeled off our clothes, sweat running down our back. I was lying there awake, barely wearing a stitch, when the banana leaf thatch began to twitch. A giant rat's beady eyes just caught the light before falling on my head, giving me quite the fright. I jumped up screaming with some high-pitched expletives, wrapping myself up in the net for mosquitoes.
Very good.
Now that's class. Expletives and mosquitoes. Nice. Bridget, now awake, knew not what to do as I fell with the net and the roof came to. I crumpled in a naked banana leaf pile. The rat, of course, had scarpered a mile. "You imbecile, you crazy man, why did you do that?" I sat bereft on the floor, babbling about a rat. "Well," says Andrew, "after a lot of explaining and mosquito bites, we managed to get a few hours sleep before sunrise." Obviously, this is where the poem runs out, and it returns to prose. "She seemed to think that jumping up in the middle of the night and screaming was some kind of bizarre Scottish mating ritual, and that there are definitely no such things as flying rats. I don't think I convinced her otherwise. With the sun up, I patched up the cabana reasonably well. Bridget was, unsurprisingly, less than enamoured to the idea of joining me for breakfast, and left, never to be seen again. However, it's not her I seek forgiveness from, but rather the people sleeping in the surrounding cabanas, who must have been woken initially by what sounded like a screaming 13-year-old girl, and then an hour of a French girl arguing with a gruff-sounding Scottish bloke. Oh, the shame." Well, I think, Andrew, quite an extraordinary piece of work, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses of pretty darn good poetry as far as I was concerned. So very good, very nice. Thank you very much indeed. It's I think it's our second one we've had as poetry. Feel free to send in yours if it's as good as that. Simon Mayo, confessions@bbc.co.uk. But let's check in with Sister Bobby from the Priory. What do you make of Andrew's rhyming confession?
Phew, it's a bit steamy in places, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but it was okay. In a PG kind of way.
Yes, it was. And it was a lovely, lovely, very naive kind of romantic interlude that he was kind of maybe heading for that didn't happen. I feel a bit sorry for him because he did his best. And let's face it, we all have different ideas of what is his best. And it seems to me that, I don't know, he seemed like a lovely companion. He did his, absolute best. He was very respectful. He sat beside the bed. And let's face it, who was to know?
But he didn't know about Proust or Hegel, and that
okay.
clearly was an
There's
issue.
lots of things not to know. There's lots of things not to know, and I think she missed out on a great guy here. So Andrew, I think you don't need forgiving.
Right.
I think you did your absolute best.
What are you saying here, novice?
Well, I think, Sister Bobby, I think the rhymes were where your head was racing with what we thought they might rhyme with, but not that I ever thought that, of course. But I think they're getting Proust and Mayan ruins all in as well. And also I had a similar experience in Zanzibar with the rat, except I hadn't got my lenses in and it was on the pillow. So I thought, oh, nice, someone's put flowers on it. And then the flowers moved and there was the rat eating the pillow. So I screamed a little as well.
Nice.
Yes.
And were you with a Bridget?
I was with the Deborah, and yeah.
Did you say zebra?
Zebra.
That's Deborah.
Deborah, yeah.
Oh,
an Italian Deborah, who is very stripy.
That's right.
But no, the new Rabbi Burns, well done, Andrew, that's fantastic. And Brigitte, you are not forgiven for being really off with him.
I was with Deborah. Were you with the zebra? Yeah. No, that's his wife.
Yeah. Welcome to the future, Bobby. We'll be visiting you on a regular basis in wherever you end up.
Harsh but fair. Here's
Yes,
Kathy.
forgiven, definitely.
What do you say, Kathy?
Well, I get mosquito bitten all the time, so that was the bit of the story that I was particularly listening to.
In Bermondsey?
Everywhere.
Oh, really?
In the UK as well, yes, absolutely everywhere. So I was thinking about that rather than the rats, actually. Impressed with the rhyming. I think Bridget came to her senses at just about the right point, so no real harm done. He did try very hard, didn't he? And he called himself dapper, which is always quite a nice phrase, I think. Yeah, I agree. I think that forgiven.
It's a big three.
Well, they were this week's confessions. Did you forgive anybody? Maybe one or two along the way. Your own dodgy secret, please. Inspired maybe by something you've just heard. Confessions at bbc.co.uk. More in a week. And don't forget, you can listen to all the interviews in case you missed any. They're all on the iPlayer. Get that Radio iPlayer app while you're there. Graham Nash played live for us on Monday. There was something in the water on Tuesday. Carrie Underwood performed a couple of songs. Pretty spectacular stuff with Carrie. Author Nicholas Sparks was here on Wednesday to talk about being a cultural phenomenon and a modern-day movie mogul and selling 100 million books and all that stuff. And Nige was cooking it country, no G, serving up jambalaya to get us in the country frame of mind and to celebrate Radio 2's DAB country service. The recipe can be found on my Radio 2 page. And if you have got this far, thank you. Feel free to tweet, saddle up and ride your pony. That'll do. It'll only take up a few characters.